Good evening, madam. Good
Yes,
evening.
yes,
Good
good evening.
evening.
Good evening, good evening. I'll just start in 2 3 minutes. Good evening and welcome to the week 5 of TA session of Design of Steel Structures taught by Professor Damodar Maiti. I am Trisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistants, and I am a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I'll start with a brief recap as always. There are two broad branches of structural engineering, analysis and design, and they go hand in hand. And analysis is the forward problem where we are given the structural dimensions, the boundary conditions, the materials and the applied loads, and we have to find the response induced in the structure, which are of two types: force type and displacement type. So force type includes stresses, and this displacement type includes strains or deflection strains. And the design is an inverse problem where we are given the loads to be withstood by the structure and some criteria on maximum deflection, etc. So the ultimate limit states and the serviceability limit states are provided, and we know what kind of loads I am expecting my structure to undergo. So then I have to find the optimum size of the structural elements and also their connectivity, their materials, all of that in design. So analysis has only a single answer. As if I'm given a structure and a certain boundary condition, loading conditions, materials, there can be only one response induced in the structure. But design does not have a single answer. So by design is an iterative process where we assume some dimensions, some materials, and see if that structure or that system is sufficient to withstand the factored loads. If yes, I can say yes, I can let the design go ahead. If not, we have to go back, redesign the, like, repropose another no, new dimensions or a new material, and then again continue the check. So two people can quite easily arrive at two different designs. So that doesn't, so generally design questions are come in subjective format, and so that there you can, whatever you have proposed, if you can show that it is enough to withstand all the factored loads, that is the correct answer. And this is always a debate, always a consideration in the industry, whether steel should be used or concrete for a particular construction. Concrete is the most versatile material for construction, since it can be poured and cast into any shape, and it can be mixed directly at the site. So and the also, of course, the raw materials in concrete is much cheaper. Concrete is basically made of four components called cement, water, and fine aggregates and coarse aggregates. The fine aggregates are generally sand, and the coarse aggregates are the stone chips kind of things. And so they are just mixed at the site, and there we make a some kind of formwork and plastic or something formwork, and then pour the liquid concrete into it, and it will get set in 28 days. But steel, on the other hand, has to be shipped directly, or the steel sections are shipped directly from the industry, and they come in, no, in limited number of varieties, the sections, and they cannot be just casting about any shape, and they have to be assembled at the site. Steel is much stronger than conventional concrete in tension and compression. In tension, of course, it is much stronger than concrete because concrete has virtually no strength in tension. But even in compression, steel is much stronger. Steel also has a very high strength to weight ratio because it has a very low density. It is a lightweight material, and it has higher strength, so the ratio is very high compared to concrete. And also it is ductile compared to concrete. So concrete generally undergoes brittle failure once the ultimate stress is reached. But steel, even after yielding, it flows for a long, like a large amount of strain. It deforms, and then finally it fractures. So that gives us warning time. If the structure is about to collapse, steel structures will give enough warning time for evacuation or for the other measures to be taken into account, while a brittle failure is a sudden failure, and we never want that. So these are the advantages steel has over concrete. But steel is a much costlier material, so steel is generally used in more specialized structures like high-rise towers or bridges. While residential building, institutional buildings with that we see around us are mostly made of reinforced concrete, because it's it's more economical to do it that way. We need design because the components individually and the entire structure should withstand the load throughout its lifespan, satisfying the serviceability criteria. And to properly design a structure, we have to ensure it is economical to construct without compromising safety. There is a cost-effective design, and for for doing that, we have to know the design procedure in detail. We have to know all the options available to us, and like the cost and the safety are always a balance. Like generally, if we want to make a structure safer, we will use a stronger material. We will increase the dimensions, we will increase the number of connections and all that, so that will make the structure safer, but it will also lead to more costly equipment, more costly material, so it will also increase the cost. So we have to strike a balance so that the structure is economical enough to serve its purpose, but we cannot compromise safety beyond a certain level. So there has to be some level of safety which is implied in the design codes whenever we are following the IS 456 for concrete or 800 for steel and designing something. There are factors of safety on the material and all the loads, and all of that actually has an implied safety incorporated into it, which we do not see explicitly. Some of the design codes in the world, like the European codes EN and the American codes like AISC, American Institute of Steel Construction, which is the American equivalent of IS 800, they actually have some reliability index. Reliability index is related to safety, which, so if I want reliability index of 3, I have to take this factor of safety. If I want a higher reliability index of 4, I might have to take greater larger factors of safety. So those things in America, some other codes are mentioned explicitly. In the Indian codes, we do not have an option to choose it, or we don't actually see it. But the factors of safety do introduce an inherent safety or inherent reliability into the structure, and striking the balance is what we need. Mechanical properties of steel, physical properties of structural steel as detailed by clause 2.2.4.1 of IS 800 2007, which is the Indian standard code for steel design. Irrespective of its grade, may be taken as the density is 7850 kg per meter cube. The modulus of elasticity, or the Young's modulus, which is the slope of the stress strain curve in the linear elastic zone, that is E, is 200, it's 2 into 10 to the power 5 megapascal or 200 GPa, gigapascal. Be careful about the units. The Poisson's ratio mu is zero point 0.3. The modulus of rigidity G is 0.769 into 10 to the power 5 megapascal, and coefficient of thermal expansion alpha is 12 into 10 to the power minus 6 per degree centigrade. These are irrespective of the grade of steel, so irrespective of the stress strain curve, these things like the stress strain curve for different grades of steel is different, but the modulus of elasticity, so the initial slope is roughly always the same, or at least similar. So the code says that whatever be the grade, these five quantities, if I need somewhere in design, generally we don't need this, but wherever I will need these, like to calculate the, I will need the unit weight of steel to take the dead load, right? Dead load is the self weight of the structure. So for that, I will need the density of steel. So it says that whether I'm using Fe 250, whether I'm using Fe 275 or something, I can take the same density roughly. But the principal mechanical properties of structural steel, which actually vary with grade, and these are the factors for on which the grade is defined. They are very important in design. They are the yield stress and the ultimate stress, Fy and Fu. This is the stress strain curve. So this is a tensile load test is carried out on a specimen, like on a cylindrical specimen. The load is increased in increments, and the strain is measured using a strain gauge or some kind of displacement measuring device. And this is a load controlled, like a load control environment. So and then I p divided by a, I get the stress and the strain I'm measuring. So the stress strain curve is plotted, so we get a nature the nature of the graph is like this. So it initially it's straight, it's linear elastic. So this slope is a Young's modulus up to a. It after a, the linear nature ceases, so it the a b region is non-linear, but it is still elastic. That means that up to b, if I load the structure and then unload it, it will regain its original configuration. Then after b, the elasticity, b is the elastic limit, the limiting point for the condition that material behaves elastically, but Hooke's law does not apply. Hooke's law is the law that says stress proportional to strain. For most practical purposes, it can be assumed that the limit of proportionality and elastic limits are the same. So A and B are very close by. Then beyond elastic limit, there will be some permanent deformation or permanent set when the load is removed. C and D are the upper yield point and lower yield point. They can also be taken to be the same point. Points after which the strain increases without correspondingly high increase in load or stress. Correspondingly high is a qualitative term, but in any stress strain curve, you can clearly see there will come a zone, if even if not an exact point, after which you can see that the slope falls rapidly. Like it changes rapidly. This was a very high slope, then suddenly the slope became very gentle. So that is the yield point, and E is the point. E is the ultimate or maximum tensile stress, and F is the fracture point. So up to E, even after yielding, there is the strain increases rapidly, but the stress does increase up to E. So that point, this point correspond, the stress corresponding to C is called Fy, and corresponding to E is called Fu. And this is what, like this is the fundamental difference in the working stress and limit state approaches are that in the working stress approach, we limit the capacity of the structure to the yield stress, but in limit state method, we allow the structure to go up to the ultimate stress, though not actually that, because we will apply some factor of safety, but I assume that the structure has the strength up to this ultimate stress. And F is that then after E, I cannot expect the structure to take any more stress, because here the structure just flows and fractures. So E is my limiting point. And these are some rolled steel sections which the BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards, publishes in SP6. They are all tabulated. The weight per unit length, geometric dimensions, and moment of inertia about both axis and etc. For each of these sections, which we get in the industry, a lot of these properties are tabulated. So this is a joist section or an I section. This is a channel or C section. This is an angle section. It can have equal legs or unequal legs. This is the T section, and the dimensions are of much lesser order than what we are expected to see in steel. In concrete, generally the sections are the cross section areas are much larger, and a consequence of this, we have like here the web thickness, flange thickness are barely a few millimeters, like 10 millimeter, 15 millimeter maximum. So a consequence of that is the buckling mode of failure that is introduced in steel, which we do not consider in concrete, which we'll discuss later when we look at the design of columns. And then square hollow section, rectangular hollow section, circular hollow section, squares, then bars, flats and plates. These are solid sections, but these are very like small dimensions. Okay, so this is the modes of failure in steel structures: bending, local buckling, shear buckling, wave crushing and buckling, lateral torsional buckling. All of these are bending and shear are the only ones that we are concerned about during concrete design. But these all these buckling modes of failures are due to the small cross sectional areas, and these are all the collapse or ultimate limit stress states. So we have to carry out checks corresponding to each of these when when we are designing some steel structural element. And deflection is a serviceability limit state, which is an additional check we have to carry out. Design philosophy is working stress and limit state method. The older IS codes and older codes of all everywhere in the world initially worked on working stress method. It is safer. It is safer in the sense it is easy. Firstly, it's easier to apply, and it just assumes that the structure has strength equivalent to its yield stress. So I'm making a very conservative guess there. I'm making a very conservative estimate. If because I'm underestimating the strength of the structure so much, so it will naturally lead to safer designs, but it will also lead to uneconomical design. So limit state method has been converged upon as a better option. Basically, this is the limit state. The design action has to be less than the design strength. This is what we have to ensure for each of the limit states. So this is why each of the every mode of failure corresponds to one limit state, which is of the format design, some action and some strength. So the limit state method of design considers all the relevant conditions pertaining to limit states of strength and serviceability. The strength limit states are based on load carrying capacity of the structure, which includes buckling, fatigue, fracture, etc. Serviceability limit states are based on the performance like reflection, vibration, etc. And the loads at working conditions are factored by the use of partial safety factors for loads, resulting in factored loads or design loads. The normal strength of the material is called the ultimate capacity, and the corresponding design strength of the material is obtained by dividing the ultimate capacity with the partial safety factor. So the member has to be designed to meet the basic criteria that design action has to be less than equal to design strength. Now, the past 2 weeks we have looked at connections. Connections are integral parts of any steel structures. They have a major role in the overall integrity because, as I've already said, that concrete is cast as a whole, integrated whole. But steel, the individual parts are brought from the industry and they are assembled at the site, and the means of assembling them are the connections. So, in a beam column junction in concrete, it is cast together. So automatically it has a fixity because it's cast as together. But in steel, I have to design the connection such that there no rotation is allowed between the two beam and the column, because if the connection is not designed properly, I assume as a structural engineer, I assume that the beam column junctions are fixed supports. So that is how I'm, whether I'm designing using STAT or ETABS or anything, I make those connections as fixed. So I don't expect, so if that is fixed, then the entire, like the bending moment diagram of the beam, of the column, everything will consider that point to be fixed. But if the connection is not designed properly, if the connection cannot actually make that junction as fixed, if that rotates, then it will completely change the behavior of the structure. So it can lead to catastrophic failure if the like if connections are not designed properly, if a connection fails, then it can lead to a progressive catastrophic failure. So next the members which the beam was connecting might fail, then it will, the load will redistribute and some other members will become overstressed and it can lead to a failure. So in steel structures, standard parts are properly connected to create the steel structures. Connections make up a large amount of cost as well. So connection design should be given top priority for both safety and structural economy. Bolts and welds are the two types of connections. Two types of connections that we consider in the IS code. There is another called rivets as well. But so bolts. are an additional structural element that is added to the structure. It has a shank and a head, and it is tightened with a nut. There are two types of bolts. The bolt is the same, but the two types of way it can take the load is, one is, if if the nut is, if the bolt is tightened very tightly, then it creates a strong normal, it creates a high normal reaction between the two surfaces it is joining, and that creates a friction. So friction type bolts bear the load using friction, and then the ones where the friction is not high enough, they have a shearing and bearing type bolt, so they have a different kind of load carrying mechanism. And welds are, last class we saw how the weld design. Weld is basically a molten metal, generally the same as the parent material of these plates. The metal is the, like, we take a metal rod and we have an electric arc, a torch. We melt the metal, and we turn, we run the rod over the length of the joint which we mean to consider, which we mean to join. So if there's a molten metal, then it solidifies and then it binds the two surfaces together. See, now we move into the topic of today's, what a simple connection which we so far have seen. Applied load passes through the center of gravity of connections. So the center of gravity connection, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, and then here the load passes through the center of gravity of the connections like this. So this is a simple connection, and from this side it's a side view, it's a double cover single bolted butt joint. Eccentric connection is where the applied load does not pass through the center of gravity of the connections. So there is an offset here. So this is the, if the load is being applied in this direction on the y-axis, and so the center of gravity of the load is this line, right? So, assuming the bolts are equidistant, even if it's a little offset, it won't matter. Like here, it might not be exactly at the center, but when there is a substantial eccentricity, the load is applied from at a distance e from the center line, the gravity of connect the center of gravity. So this is called an eccentric connection. They are sometimes applied through a bracket plate. A bracket plate is something that is like, kind of transversely bolted to a structure, and if I'm apply the force at the tip of the bracket connection, it introduces an eccentricity of E. Connection subject to an eccentric shear. There is something called seat connection. So these are called seat angles or cleat angles. So this is an so okay. Let's look at this structure. This is an I section which is placed like this vertically. So this acts as a column. Then this is another I section which is placed horizontally. So this acts as a beam, and the beam is attached to the column using these seat angles. So these, and what does these angles do? The angle is bolted to the beam and to the column, So effectively, the angle is the vessel joining the two sides, the two members. And if I'm applying shear in here along this line, then it has an offset here. So that is where the connection will be subjected to eccentric shear. Framed connection, like these are basically examples of where the types of connection with which is subject to eccentric shear. Seat connection is one of them. Framed connection is another of them. If I apply the shear at this point at here, then it will have this kind of eccentricity. Bracket connection, this is another kind of connection. This is a bracket plate. As I said, bracket plate is something that is, I can't say the exact definition, but it looks like this, that it is transversely attached to a column, and the load is applied this side. So this is the diagram which we saw here. This was a bracket, and this is the eccentricity that is being introduced. Now, bolted bracket connection. Bolted bracket connections are required at places where two members to be connected do not intersect each other. This leads to enhanced eccentricity in both the connection and the member to be joined, and thus structurally it is not preferable. The bolts in this type of connection are subjected to shear and torsion or bending due to eccentric shear. When the bolts are subjected to direct shear and torque due to shear, then the connection is classed as bracket type connection type 1. When the bolts are subjected to shear and tension, then the connection is called bracket connection type 2. There are two different approaches for analyzing the bracket connection type 1, the elastic method and the ultimate strength method. In the elastic method, the friction between the connected parts, that is frictional resistance, is altogether ignored, and the connected parts are assumed to be perfectly rigid with connectors being perfectly elastic. The elastic method of analysis gives very conservative result. So this is what happens when we are underestimating the strength of a structure. Then we get safer design, but it is conservative and it is uneconomical. The second approach, the ultimate strength method, gives results that are more close to realistic value, but this method is quite difficult to apply in routine design. IS 800 does not specify any particular method for the analysis of bracket connection type 1, and it depends on the discretion of the designer to use any of the analysis method. So now this is this is the type 1. One second. So in this connection, the twisting moment in the bolts is in the plane of the connection. So here, a bracket. The load is applied here. This is the center line of center of gravity of the bolts. This is the eccentricity. This occurs when the line of action of load is in the plane of the connection, and the center of gravity of the connection in elastic method, or the instantaneous center in the ultimate strength method, is the center of rotation. So the whole bolt group is subjected to shear and torsion. And if the load, if this load was applied in a this direction, then it would be a tension kind of thing, I think. I don't have a diagram here. So here, if the force was being applied here, it would be a type 1, and if it is being applied here, it will be connected to an equivalent force and moment. And no, I think this is also a type 1. A type 2 should be connected, subject to shear and tension. I think this should be, it is when the line of action of the load is in the plane of connection. So if it is not in the plane of connection, it means that if the bracket was like this projecting out of the plane, and then if a load was being applied, then the bolts would undergo shear and tension. This when the load, when the line of action of load is in the plane of connection, then that, okay, sorry, the this is the, when the load is applied in this, so the plane of the connection is this plane of the sheet of paper wherever you're drawing this is the load is also being applied in this plane. And if the load was being applied into this plane or out of the plane, then it would be like,
Just, just, it
yes,
is on the plane, same
yes, if
plane.
the load is being applied like this, right,
Load is
into the
acting
plane or out
same
of the
plane,
plane, yes, perpendicular to the,
perpendicular to the plane and same
yes,
plane. So
yes,
this
yes,
is what you have seen, that is same plane. This is same plane.
yes,
Same plane is same.
yes, yes, yes,
That
yes.
I'm saying. Yes. And
So if,
another one is perpendicular to the load.
yes, perpendicular to the, yes, perpendicular to the bracket. That means like this or this. If it was being applied, then it would be the type 2 connection.
Okay.
And so if now for the type 1, if the load is being applied like this, then each of these bolts will undergo some, it will undergo of F1 and then F2. F2 is due to the moment. So these F1, these like the ones The forces in the vertical direction are the ones due to direct shear, and then the moment is being applied. Since there is an eccentricity, there will be a moment, and that is applying a force. Elastic analysis: the eccentric axial load P is made concentric along with torque M. There is a torque M into P naught, which is like, since this is the center of gravity, M into P naught is the moment. Let F1 be the force in the bolt due to direct shear, and F2 be the forces in the bolts due to torsion. The resultant force in each bolt due to F1 and F2 must be less than the strength of the bolt. So it is assumed that the load on joint is shared equally by all the bolts. Now, since a force P is being applied in the downward direction, all the bolts are taking a force equal to P divided by N. So F1 is P divided by N, and the force in any bolt due to torsion is directly proportional to its distance from the center of rotation, which is naturally what it happens. So F2 is proportional to R. R is basically the center of rotation will be at this point. Center of rotation is one point. It will of course lie along the line of action of the line of gravity, and we also have to consider this line of this center of gravity. So this point, we have to see the this radial distance of all the bolts from this point. So this so for the first two and the last two bolts, the radial distance will be equal, and for this the radial distance will be a little less. So F2 will be proportional to R. F2 is KR. So K is F2 by R, and the torque about center of rotation of the bolt group is F2 into R again, because the that is KR square, because K is this. The total resisting torque is sigma kr square. So since k is a constant, we take it out of the summation. So F2 by R sigma r square. The resisting torque must be equal to or greater than the torque on the connection. So M is F2 divided by R into sigma r square, and M we know is P into E naught. It is a moment, so there is a force multiplied by the eccentricity. So from this we get F2 equal to P E naught R divided by sigma R square. So that is like R depends. So for each bolt we have to put the specific value of R, and in the denominator it's the summation of the square of all the radial distances. So the force F2 is maximum when the distance R is maximum. Since all the other terms are constants, like sigma R square is also a constant for a particular arrangement of bolts, but the R varies for each bolt. So let the maximum radial distance of the that is I have to choose the bolt which is placed farthest away from the center point of rotation. So that will be my critical bolt. It will have let it have a radial distance of Rn. So F2 is P E naught Rn divided by sigma R square. So now the two forces F1 and F2 act at different angles at various bolts. Now the F1 always acts in this along the actual line of action of P, but this F2 acts perpendicular to the radial distance. Like if this is the radial distance, the F2 will be perpendicular to that. Here the radial distance is horizontal, so F2 will also act in the vertical direction. So for these two bolts, the two forces will actually get added up. But for this, we have to take a resultant considering the angle between the two forces theta. So the forces F1 and F2 act at different angles on various bolts of the connection. Let for any one such typical bolt, the angle between the two forces be theta. So this theta we have to get from geometry. Okay, so generally the arrangement of the bolts will be given. So some of the dimensions will be given. So from that we'll get the theta. E naught is the perpendicular. No, so the resultant force F of F1 and F2 on the critical bolt. The critical bolt means the ones whose radial distance is the highest. F is square root of F1 square plus F2 square plus 2 F1 F2 cos theta, which is the resultant of vectors. For connection to be safe, this force must be less than the strength of the bolt. The strength of the bolt we have already studied in the last class. Here E naught is perpendicular distance measured from center of rotation of bolt group to the line of action of load, which is called eccentricity. R1 to Rn is distances of the bolts from the center of rotation of the bolt group. N is the number of bolts. F1 is the force due to direct shear. F2 is the force due to the moment or the torque, and K is a constant. So the resultant force F will be maximum when the angle theta is maximum. Bolt subjected to maximum resultant force, that is the critical bolt, is the one farthest away from the center of gravity of the bolt group and nearest to the applied line of load. So this is an example here. This is how the dimensions are given. So the edge distance, end distance, pitch, and the gauge, and all of this will be given. So from this we can find out the theta, we can calculate it geometrically. Find the safe load P that can be carried by the bracket connection. The bolts are 20 diameter of grade 4.6. The thickness of the flange of I section is 13.7 and that of the bracket plate is 16 Steel grade is not given, so let us assume Fu 410 steel is used with Fu ultimate strength is 410 and yield strength is 250. For bolts of grade 4.6, we know that FUB is 400 and the YB will be zero point 0.6 into 400, that is 240. Partial safety factor for bolt material is 1.25. Stress area of to 20 diameter bolt is this. We have seen that in all of this in last class. From figure, pitch of bolt is 90, edge distance is 50. Shear strength of bolt in shingles here, we know this. And these all of these we have already done in the previous class. The main thing about eccentric connection is how to calculate the load, because in the previous, in the in simple connections we just divide the force by the number of bolts and we get the load capacity, like the load demand, which in the limit state we have to see that the demand is less than the capacity. So in simple connections the demand is very easy to find out. We just take the applied stress and divide it by the number of volts. But here the demand has to be calculated using these considerations. So there are 10 volts here, 1 2 3 sorry 8 volts here. And so I'm not assuming P, I'm assuming that P, let us, the load is P, so the direct force in each bolt is P by 8. Force in the bolt due to moment is this, and we know all of these R we can calculate. So this R will be 45 plus 90. This like this distance is 45 plus 90 and this is 65. So 65 square plus 45 plus 90 square, that is Rn here for these like this corner 4 bolts, and for these two bolts it should be 65 square plus 45 square, root of that. Yes, 65 square by 45 square. So there are 4 bolts of two types each. So the sigma r square is 4 into this plus 4 into this. And here F2 will, the most critical one will be the one which is farthest away. So this distance R I have to consider 149 into 8.83, and I get this, and I get the cos theta also by like this dis, this distance divided by this distance, cos inverse cos theta is 65 divided by square root of 65 square plus 45 plus 90 square. The resultant force on this bolt is F1 square plus F2 square plus 2 F1 F2 cos theta. This is in terms of P, because F1 and F2 are both in terms of P. So I get some factor of P, like this will be the resultant force on the bolt, and I know that F has to be this, like this resultant force has to be less than the strength. The strength I've already calculated here. This is the strength. So I have to make that 0.3471 P has to be less than this strength. And so I get P has to be less than 130.39 kilonewton. And then don't forget to like apply the factor of safety again, because on loads we apply factor of safety of 1.5 generally. So if if the safe load that I can apply, like if the factor load capacity of the bolt is it's telling me that I can apply a load of 130 kilonewton on the bolt, then the maximum service load has to be less than that. I have to divide it by 1.5, and I'm not going to allow more than 86 here. This is also a simple question. It is required, like a similar question is required to design a bolted bracket connection for any subbolt due to factored Dirac live load. The eccentricity of an end reaction 85 185 This is the bolt rate is given. So this is an opposite, like basically this was an analysis problem, and this was not an analysis problem, but this was kind of analysis problem, because I had to I was given the design and I was asked to find out what is the force capacity. But here I am not given the design, I'm given the force that it can withstand, and I'm given the eccentricity, and I'm asked to design the bolted connection. So I have to propose something. Like here I've proposed like 14 bolts in this arrangement. And then first we have to propose the distances, like the gauge distance, end distance, the grade of bolt, and the pitch and everything. And then I will calculate the exactly, we will follow the previous procedure that we have done here and find out what P it can withstand. And if I see that that P is lesser, like greater than this, because this is what, if this is the actual demand, I want the capacity to be greater than the demand, of course considering the factor of safety, then I can say that the design is fine. So this is what has been done here exactly. Provide 7 bolts in each row, and then seen that this is safe, as the force is less than the shear force. Provide 20 diameter bolts with 7 bolts in each into vertical rows. So yes, this is a pretty short topic. It's just about the force calculation really, because the strength calculations we have already seen. So, are there any questions?
Please see the figure 11.13. You please see the figure 11.13, type 1, 11.13. You have shown that F1, F2, F2 is upward. F2 force is showing, F2 force is upward, but
Yes,
this force should be downward, because P by N, each force will be shared equally. That therefore the force will be
the
downward.
F1, right? Yes, the F1 should be downward. The F1 should all
Downward,
be
and
downward. Yes, yes,
yes,
yes.
and F2 are only downwards. So, for that reason, the resultant force will be downward. For
Exactly,
the
exactly.
bolt number one, if you see
Yeah.
bolt number one, the dimension has been, sorry, the figure has been given upwards.
This one you said, so F1 will be
Yes,
downward.
right side.
Right, right side. This
Yes,
one.
yes, 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 this one.
F1 should be
This one.
downwards, and I think that even the
Because
F2 has been, even the
resultant force,
F2.
resultant force be downward for
Yes, yes,
this bolt. Yes, that I'm doing.
yes. That's
Okay,
right.
no problem. Okay, no problem. No other questions. Okay,
Okay.
you can continue, Miss.
Okay, then it's okay. That's all for today. We'll meet again next Tuesday. I'll end the class then. Thank you for attending.